to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. They say chicken noodle soup is for when you're homesick from school, but apparently it's also the comfort food of choice for mother-in-laws on a power trip. Today in the rLounge, a recipe for disaster. Mother-in-law tried to ruin my wedding by changing the menu, so I canceled her invite and sent her a bill for the original plan. Backstory. The first meeting with my future mother-in-law after our engagement, she immediately suggested we have the wedding at her church with her pastor. When I mentioned we'd already picked a venue, a beautiful lakeside property, she pursed her lips and said, "Well, I suppose that's nice." Then she pulled out a photo album of her own wedding for inspiration. The photos were clearly from the 90s, complete with puffy sleeves and dated hairstyles. We set our wedding date for a Saturday in mid-October. My fiancé and I decided on a fall-themed wedding with rich burgundy, orange, and gold colors and seasonal food. When we shared our vision with his mom, she said spring weddings were so much more traditional. A couple weeks later, she texted me a list of 42 people she wanted to invite, most of whom my fiancé barely knew or hadn't spoke to in years. When I explained our venue had a capacity limit and we were trying to keep the guest list manageable, she responded, "Well, I'm contributing $5,000, so I should get a say." This was the first I'd heard about any financial contribution from her. We never asked for money and had been planning to pay for everything ourselves. When we visited potential caterers, she insisted on coming along. We found an amazing one who specialized in upscale comfort food, exactly what we wanted. Throughout the tasting, she repeatedly asked about substituting our choices with bland options like chicken marsala and steamed vegetables. We signed the contract with the caterer, putting down a $3,000 non-refundable deposit for our menu: butternut squash soup, harvest salad, choice of prime rib, cedar plank salmon, or mushroom risotto, plus signature cocktails and a dessert table with mini pies instead of cake. My future mother-in-law wasn't present at the signing, but she texted me 17 times during our appointment. I ignored most of them. The next month, she showed up at my apartment unannounced with bridal magazines from what looked like 2005, pointing out white dresses that would suit my figure better than the one I'd already purchased. She told me my color scheme was a bit much and suggested pastels instead. I smiled through gritted teeth and thanked her for the magazines, which went straight into the recycling bin after she left. As planning continued, she asked for the contact info for our vendors so she can discuss a few things. I deflected by saying we'd handle all communications. She huffed that I was excluding her from the process and that this was her son's wedding too. I reminded her it was primarily our wedding. About 3 months before the wedding, she started sending daily texts about small suggestions. Most began with, "I know you've probably already decided, but..." My fiancé assured he'd handle her. And he did try, but she was relentless. Then she sent us a check for $5,000 with a note saying, "For the wedding, to use as needed." We thanked her but clarified that we were covering costs ourselves. She insisted we keep it just in case, saying, "You'll need it for changes that might come up." I had a bad feeling about accepting the money, but my fiancé thought refusing would cause more drama. My suspicions were confirmed when I got a call from our caterer saying someone claimed to be co-planning the wedding had contacted them about menu revisions. I immediately knew it was my future mother-in-law. The caterer confirmed she wanted to change almost everything we selected to more traditional options. Thankfully, the caterer refused without hearing from us directly. I confronted her via text. She claimed she was just trying to help and that our menu was too exotic for regular people. She said older guests wouldn't eat things like butternut squash soup or cedar planked salmon. My fiancé called her and set boundaries. She cried and said she felt excluded from her only son's wedding planning. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I discovered she had created a wedding website for us with completely different information than our actual plans. It listed her church as the venue and mentioned a traditional sit-down dinner. The site had already been shared with some guests. I was absolutely livid. My fiancé and I had an emergency meeting. He finally agreed his mother had crossed several lines. We sent out a mass email to all guests clarifying the correct wedding details at our official website. His mother called him sobbing, saying we'd embarrassed her. She claimed she was only trying to make our special day perfect. He stood firm that she needed to respect our decisions. A few weeks later, I received another message from our caterer. My future mother-in-law had visited their office in person, presented herself as my mother, and attempted to put down a new deposit to change the menu. They refused, but warned us this was concerning behavior. I was beyond furious. This was no longer just annoying, it was actively sabotaging our wedding plans. The next day, she sent a group text to my fiancé's family claiming I was difficult and rejecting all her input. For the wedding, several relatives I barely knew started texting me asking why I was being so hard on her. One aunt even suggested I should compromise more because she only has one son. We immediately changed all our vendor passwords and added verbal passwords for any changes. We informed every vendor that only we had authority to make changes, and anyone else claiming to represent us should be ignored. 4 weeks before the wedding, she showed up at our final menu tasting, which she wasn't invited to, and made gagging noises when trying our butternut squash soup. She told the caterer directly that most guests would prefer chicken noodle. The caterer looked to us with raised eyebrows, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. After she left, the caterer pulled me aside and mentioned this wasn't the first time she'd tried to contact them. Apparently, she'd been calling weekly with suggestions that they'd been deflecting. I was mortified and apologized for putting them in that position. 2 days later, we discovered she had contacted our venue to discuss alternate seating arrangements and tried to change our bar package to just wine and beer instead of the full open bar we paid for. The venue coordinator called to confirm these changes with us, and we had to explain the situation yet again. The breaking point came when our caterer called in a panic. My future mother-in-law had shown up with a cashier's check trying to change our entire menu 2 weeks before the wedding. She claimed that I had changed my mind but was too busy to come in person. The caterer got suspicious and called me directly to confirm. I was speechless. This had gone beyond meddling into something truly disturbing. That evening, my fiancé and I had a serious discussion. We decided we had no choice but to uninvite his mother from the wedding. We calculated that her interference had cost us an additional $1,200 in fees for security measures, reconfirmations, and administrative time with vendors. They had to spend time double-checking with us about her changes and updating their records to prevent unauthorized modifications. The next day, we sent her a formal email uninviting her from our wedding and including an invoice for $1,200 for costs incurred by her interference. We returned her $5,000 check uncashed and informed her that if she appeared at the venue, security would escort her out. It was the hardest email my fiancé had ever had to send, but he agreed it was necessary. As expected, she blew up our phones with calls and texts. Then she rallied the flying monkeys. We muted notifications and focused on final wedding details. 1 week before the wedding, she sent a manipulative text. "I guess I'll just sit at home alone while my son gets married." My fiancé responded, "Yes, that's exactly what you'll be doing." The wedding day arrived with perfect autumn weather. Our menu was exactly what we wanted, and everyone raved about the food. Several guests specifically mentioned how much they loved the butternut squash soup and cedar planked salmon. She didn't show up, though we had briefed security just in case. Several relatives who had sided with her were notably absent, but honestly, it made for a more relaxed atmosphere. One of the bridesmaids admitted she'd been worried about the drama, but was relieved everything went smoothly. My new husband looked happier than I'd seen him in months, free from the stress of managing his mother's interference. During our honeymoon, we mostly kept our phones off, but occasionally checked messages from close friends and family who had attended the wedding. Everyone said it was beautiful, and several people specifically complimented the food. No one mentioned his mother's absence except one cousin who texted, "Best decision you could have made. We all had a better time without the drama." A few days later, we received an electronic transfer for $1,200 with the message, "Fine, but this doesn't change that you broke my heart." We didn't respond. Update. It's been about a month since I posted about my mother-in-law's attempts to hijack our wedding and our decision to uninvite her and bill her for the trouble she caused. First, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments. I showed them to my husband, and it really helped him feel validated. A lot has happened since we got back from our honeymoon, so I thought I'd share an update on the ongoing mother-in-law saga. When we returned from our honeymoon, which was amazing by the way, we discovered my mother-in-law had been quite busy during our absence. She had posted a long, self-pitying rant on about being cruelly excluded from her son's wedding. The post included edited screenshots of our communications that painted her as the victim, conveniently leaving out all her interference with our vendors. The screenshots she shared were cropped to only show parts where we were setting boundaries, making it look like we were being harsh for no reason. She didn't include any of her messages about trying to change our menu or contacting our vendors behind her backs. Then we noticed several wedding photos had been posted online by guests, and she had commented on every single one about how heartbroken she was that she wasn't allowed to be there for her only son's special day. She wrote things like, "I wish I could have seen this moment in person, but I wasn't permitted to attend," and "My heart breaks for seeing these beautiful moments I was excluded from." We posted our own statement with receipts. We created a detailed post with screenshots of caterer communications, venue emails confirming her interference, and a timeline of events. We didn't respond to her directly, but made sure everyone who needed to see it was tagged. Our post wasn't emotional or accusatory. We simply laid out the facts. Mother-in-law contacted our caterer multiple times trying to change our menu without our knowledge. Mother-in-law created a false wedding website for incorrect information and shared it with guests. Mother-in-law showed up at our venue trying to change our bar package. These actions cost us additional time and money to correct. We included the email from our caterer confirming she had shown up with a cashier's check trying to change completely our menu 2 weeks before the wedding. We also shared the invoice we sent her for $12,000 in additional costs her interference had caused. One aunt wrote, "I had no idea it was this bad. I'm so sorry I gave you a hard time. She tried to change my daughter's quinceañera theme 2 weeks before the event," her sister confessed, "and she once canceled my brother's anniversary party reservation to move it to a restaurant she preferred. We've all just gotten used to managing her, but I think you did the right thing by standing up to her." About a week later, we received a formal-looking email from mother-in-law demanding we take down our defamatory social media post as it was damaging her reputation. The email was written in this weird pseudo-legal language, like she had Googled how to write a cease and desist letter, but didn't quite get it right. We ignored it. My husband pointed out that if she was concerned about her reputation, she should have thought about that before trying to hijack our wedding. Truth isn't defamation. As the holidays approached, she sent a party invitation addressed only to my husband, not me. The invitation was for our annual holiday gathering, which we had attended together for the past 3 years. My husband declined with a simple, "We come as a package deal now. Either both of us are invited or neither of us will attend." She didn't respond to this message. The final straw came when we showed up at our apartment unannounced with Christmas gifts and a tear-stained face. We were actually heading out to dinner when she appeared in our hallway. She said she just wanted to move past this and that families should be together for the holidays. When we didn't immediately welcome her in and cancel our plans, her demeanor changed. The tears dried up remarkably quickly, and she left saying, "I guess I'll just have to accept that you don't want me in your lives anymore." We also had some great conversations with his dad, who divorced mother-in-law years ago. He's been supportive. For now, we're maintaining low contact with mother-in-law. My husband will respond to direct messages if they're respectful, but he doesn't initiate contact. I have blocked her on my phone and my social media because I don't need the stress. I'll update again if anything significant changes, but for now, we're enjoying the peace that comes with setting and maintaining clear boundaries. Thanks again for all the support on my original post. It really helped validate that we weren't overreacting. What kills me is how she plays the victim the second someone calls her out. "You broke my heart." No, Brenda. You broke the boundaries, the budget, and nearly the caterer's will to live. You tried to swap out butternut squash soup for chicken noodle. You broke good taste, not your heart. Let her cry into her lukewarm whine about being excluded. She didn't lose a wedding invite. She lost the power trip she thought she was owed. Do you have a mother-in-law story like this? Share it in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.